So good evening, everyone. My name is Debbie Singizer, and I would like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Get on Board Pre-Candidate Training. We will be answering questions as we go along. So if you do have a question, please type it in the Q&A box. We won't be using that chat box tonight, but just the Q&A box. And if you have questions after the webinar, please email them to me, and I will forward them to the appropriate individual. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be archived on VSBA's website under resources. Now, I would like to introduce Sue Siglowski, Executive Director of the Vermont School Boards Association. Sue?
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you to all of you who have joined us this evening. I'm delighted that you're interested in running for school board. We're always looking for informed and dedicated people to serve on school boards in Vermont. Prior to joining the Vermont School Boards Association, I myself was a school board member for 13 plus years, serving on the Meadowy and Paulet school boards, as well as the board of the Bennington-Rutland Supervisory Union. I grew up in the small town of Rupert, Vermont, where I began my education in a one-room schoolhouse. That building is now the town library, and the town has built a new school many years ago with the town of Paulet. I'm a third-generation school board member. My father and my grandfather were school board members, and the opportunity to serve my community in this way was something that I always wanted to do. I enjoyed being a bridge between the community and the schools. During my time serving as a school board member, I came to realize how important public education is to building strong communities and a healthy democracy. So this evening, this is how our webinar will go. First, I'm going to provide you with some information about what school board service is, and should you decide to run, what you'll need to do. Then we have a panel composed of 4 current school board members who will speak about their own experience serving on their respective boards. After that, we'll provide you with a very brief overview of how the Vermont School Boards Association supports school board members throughout the state. And then we will leave some time at the end for any remaining questions. We are scheduled to end at 7 p.m., but we're willing to stay on a bit longer if you have more questions. Before we get to all of that, I would like to share with you a brief message from Vermont School Boards Association President Flor Diaz-Smith, who unfortunately could not be with us this evening. Flor wanted to welcome all of you to this webinar, but had a scheduling conflict with her own school board. Flor has served as a school board member for more than 10 years and is currently the chair of the Washington Central Unified Union School District Board. In addition to being the president of the Vermont School Boards Association, Flor is also on the board of directors of the National School Boards Association. Now we will hear from Flor.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad you joined us tonight. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you tonight, but school board service is dear to my heart. Many years ago, growing up in Guatemala, I could not have dreamed that one day I would be president of an organization like VSBA. It would also have been a dream, and only a dream, to serve on a school board in a country that places such value in educating all children. In order to run for the school board, I first had to become a U.S. citizen. It was worth the effort because I believed that given my background, education, and life experience, I had something to offer my adopted hometown. If I can put it simply, I knew that I would bring a degree of diversity to the board's decision-making. One of the goals of VSBA is to increase the number of qualified and diverse candidates who run for open seats on our school boards. And to that end, we need to ask ourselves who is not represented at the table tonight, and then we need to encourage those people to run. As board members, we have a unique opportunity, I might even say a responsibility, to make the world a better, more equitable place for everyone. And if public education is indeed the foundation of our democracy, I believe in my deepest of heart that it is, then our work takes on even greater urgency and significance. We have been given a voice in the future of our country. Let us use it for the benefit of all, including those voices who have historically been unheard or dismissed. I hope tonight you're inspired to run for school board.
Thank you, Floor, for those inspiring words. Now let's take a look at the role of the school board. We use the term governance a lot when discussing school board work. Let's take a minute to define what governance is. As you can see from these definitions, governance is a higher level function. To govern means to steer or set the direction. In our case, when talking about education, the board is responsible for steering the school district towards its vision, a vision that is written and reflects the thinking of the whole community, something we will get to in just a minute. By governing well, a board helps a district to stay true to its mission, to honor its purpose, and to answer the most critical of questions, why? As in, why do we exist? For example, why does the Washington Central Unified Union School District exist? What is its purpose? Effective boards focus on governance. They leave the management or day-to-day operations of districts to the superintendent. So in terms of roles and responsibilities in the district, boards are responsible for the governance of the district. The superintendent is responsible for the management of the district. Another way to think of this distinction is that boards assure that schools are well run, but they do not run them. Should you be elected, you will see this again. The VSBA spends time going over the difference between governance and management and the respective roles and responsibilities of the board and superintendent during the training we do with new board members each spring. So we will leave it there for now. In its role, the board acts as a trustee on behalf of the community to provide oversight of public education in the district. Its job is to ensure that three things happen. First, that every student in the district receives a high-quality education. Second, that the taxpayers get a good return on their investment. And third, that the district operates efficiently, effectively, and ethically, which is important for many reasons, not the least of which is that it builds trust between the board and the community. So the next logical question is, how does a board ensure that these three things happen, keeping in mind its governance role? At the VSBA, we have developed a way to organize the governance work of school boards according to categories, as you see here. All 6 of these categories, or pillars, as we often call them, are equally important to the success of a school district in achieving its goals. Let's take a look at each pillar briefly. Again, keeping in mind that a deeper dive will happen during your orientation after you've been elected. This orientation will be done by the board chair and superintendent, and also the VSBA offers 2 virtual sessions created specifically for newly elected board members in the spring, which we encourage you to attend if you are elected. As you can see here, the first pillar is to engage the community and establish a vision. The board is in the strongest position whenever it is engaged with the community. The board should develop structured and ongoing opportunities for the community to define and refine the vision for the school district. And once that vision is in place, the board then takes on the responsibility for monitoring progress and making policy and budgetary decisions to achieve the vision. To keep the community engaged in the ongoing work of the district, including both successes and challenges, the board must seek ways to interact with community stakeholders in a variety of settings and contexts. One of the most obvious times community engagement happens every year is around budget season, specifically at the annual district meeting when the board presents the new budget for the following fiscal year to the registered voters. However, community engagement really should be happening 12 months out of the year. Again, the board is in its strongest position whenever it is engaged with the community. The second pillar of essential school board work is policy. Of the 32 specific duties delegated to local school boards by the General Assembly, the very first responsibility on the list is the duty to determine the educational policies of the school district. The development and maintenance of school district policies is the central job of the school board. The board must ensure the district not only achieves educational results for students, but does so in a manner that complies with legal requirements and meets community expectations. The board does this by setting policies that are aligned with the values and concerns of the community on whose behalf the board serves. Remember this idea of trusteeship. The school board acts as trustees on behalf of the community. Once the board has spoken in policy, it delegates to the administration the authority to further interpret the policy, which is often done through written procedures. The board then regularly monitors for policy compliance. If it is important enough to be addressed in policy, then it should be monitored. And one of the things new board members should do is familiarize themselves with all of the district policies, and those can be found on the school district's websites. Moving on, the third pillar is board and superintendent partnership. Perhaps the most important decision a board makes is to hire a qualified superintendent to lead and manage education in the supervisory union. Remember, boards provide oversight. They do not manage the day-to-day operations of the school system. Vermont law designates the superintendent as the chief executive officer. As the CEO, the superintendent is accountable for the operations of the entire school system. The board-superintendent relationship is pivotal to the success of a school district. It matters for many reasons. Perhaps most importantly, it matters to student achievement. Studies have shown that in districts with high student achievement, one of the primary characteristics of the school board was a good working relationship with the superintendent. Ideally, we want this relationship to be a partnership, one that is based on mutual respect and trust, and for the board and superintendent to act as a united team, one where they work together collaboratively. Here is a breakdown of the roles of the board, the superintendent, and the principal. Clarity of roles is very important to the success of a district. The different parties need to understand their respective roles so that they can do the job that is expected of them and stay out of each other's lanes. The Vermont Agency of Education has a handout that delineates in greater detail the roles and responsibilities in Vermont school systems, from the board level to the superintendents, to principals, to teachers. The link to this document is at the bottom of the slide, and I would suggest that you take a look at it when you have some time. The fourth pillar is develop a budget and assure financial oversight. Boards have two important roles here. First is assuring the education system has adequate resources to achieve its mission. And second, providing high-level financial oversight to assure that the resources are properly managed on behalf of taxpayers. The board has 6 major responsibilities related to the finances of the district, which are covered in detail during the training VSBA does in the spring with newly elected school board members. For our purposes today, this is what is important to keep in mind: that a budget should show the values of the school district as they have been articulated before. Remember that community engagement work that we spoke about earlier? That is where a board needs to really understand from its community members what is important to them in terms of public education. This will help so much during the budget season when tough decisions have to be made in terms of what to keep and what to cut. The fifth pillar is monitor progress. The board is accountable to the community to ensure the district is making reasonable progress in achieving outcomes for students and that the system is operating in compliance with all policies, laws, and regulations. To meet its obligation, the board needs to regularly monitor both areas. Monitoring is key to ensuring fidelity to the district's vision and goals. This is a list of some of the monitoring tasks a board will undertake on, hopefully, a regular and scheduled basis. Finally, the sixth and last pillar, effective and ethical operations. As elected officials, school board members must act with integrity and adhere to the highest ethical standards. Ethical and effective operations are crucial to a strong school board. Effective operations are characterized by board members who are clear that they have no legal authority apart from the board. Boards that assure that schools are well run, but do not try to run them. Board members who avoid actual and perceived conflicts of interest, and board members who maintain confidentiality of executive session. A board meeting is where board work is done. It is a public meeting, but not a meeting of the public, an important distinction to note. The dates of regular board meetings are agreed to by the board during its reorganizational meeting in the spring. Meetings are publicly warned and must comply with other provisions in the open meeting law. Boards are required to use Robert's Rules of Order to conduct their business. These topics are covered during a board member's orientation, and the VSBA offers training on them as well. And that is it in a nutshell. Those are the 6 main categories or pillars of school board's essential work. Should you become a school board member, you will learn more about each of these and how to become an effective board member who uses good governance. So, are you ready to run? If you decide to run, and we hope that you do, here is what you need to know. First, let's go over the eligibility requirements. These are enumerated in Vermont statute. You must be a legal voter in the school district that you want to serve. This is laid out in 16 VSA section 558. You are not eligible to hold office if one of these stipulations listed on the slide is true. But note that there's an asterisk at the bottom because there are a few exceptions. If you have any questions about your own situation and whether you meet these eligibility requirements, the best thing to do is contact the Elections Division of the Secretary of State's office. Please note that there are 2 ways to become a candidate, and it depends on how your school district conducts elections. For those that use Australian ballot, there are steps that must be followed. Step 1 is that there are forms that we have linked to on this slide that can be downloaded from the Secretary of State's website. Step 2 is to fill out the consent of candidate form, which is one of those forms on the website. And step 3 is to work on your petition. You need to pay attention to the seat that you're running for because the number of signatures for the petition is tied to that position. And a tip from people who've been through it before, it's always a good idea to get a couple of extra signatures just in case some of the signatures you collect are invalid for one reason or another. When you submit your petition, be sure not to submit it late because there aren't any exceptions to the deadline. If that happens, your option would be to launch a write-in campaign, which is a bit more challenging than submitting a petition and having your name on the ballot. Also note that school districts with charters may have different petition requirements. So it's always good to check in with the central office of the school district if you have any questions about the elections. Specifically, the administrative assistant to the superintendent is often a very good resource. They'll often know about the open seats and also know about the election process. And town clerks can also be a very helpful resource. If your district does not use Australian ballot, it is a much simpler process. As you can see here, you will be elected from the floor at town meeting. Now, on to our panel. We are fortunate to have with us this evening 4 current school board members from around the state with a lot of experience to share with us. Let me introduce them to you first, and then each person will present for about 5 minutes. We have asked them to touch on a few topics, including their length of service, why they initially decided to run for school board, is serving on school board the same or different from what they expected, what has pleasantly surprised them about school board service, and if someone is interested in learning more about what their local school board does, what would they suggest that individual do to learn more? So now let me introduce you to our panelists in the order that they will be speaking. First, there's Bill Edgerton, who is the vice chair of the Rochester Stockbridge Unified Union School District Board. Next, Natasha Eckert, who is a member of the Washington Central Unified Union School District Board. After that, Eric Montbriand, the chair of the Wellspring Unified Union School District Board. And finally, Isaiah Donaldson, member of the Winooski School District Board. If you have any questions for the panelists, please type them into the Q&A box, and we will take the questions after all the speakers have presented. If you'd like to direct your question to one of the speakers, please indicate which one. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Bill Edgerton to get us started.
Thank you, Sue, and thanks for everybody that's attending this webinar tonight. You're doing your homework. You're trying to determine whether public service as a school board member is a good use of your time and a good use of your talents. You're trying to figure out whether or not you can make a meaningful difference, can make a meaningful contribution for the children in your community. And I think you're off to a great start. You're showing tonight by just being here that you've got the intellectual curiosity and seriousness of purpose. And both those attributes fit very well this point. Very few volunteer organizations and opportunities are as impactful as being a school board member. And that's true here in Vermont and throughout the wonderful country that we love. In my 2.5 years as being a board member, I've learned some things. I want to share 2 key messages and then 4 attributes I think you should be thinking about whether or not you think you can be an effective board member. But the 2 messages, the first one is this: you can make a difference. As Sue mentioned, there's studies that show that board superintendent teamwork makes a difference in student performance. Those same studies show that effective board leadership makes a direct impact on student performance. Strong boards, effective boards help. Strong, weak boards, dysfunctional boards hurt student performance. I don't think a lot of us realize that. We think, well, we're just kind of, that's what the teachers do. That's what the principals do. No, we show it in so many ways, direct or indirect. And the second message I want to make is that quality schools make a difference not only in the lives of our children, but they make a difference in our communities and our viability of our communities. Frequently, the local school is the lifeblood of our community. They attract young families to live here, to have their kids go to school here, and to be employed here. And if Vermont's going to sustain its economic viability, we need to have young people, young families, talented adults working to make Vermont as special as it is. Quality schools also maintain and enhance local property values. People might not be aware of that, especially senior citizens like myself. Oh, gee, why am I paying for schools? Or one reason is that it can help maintain and sustain and strengthen the property value of your home if and when you decide that it's time to move on someplace else. And finally, quality schools can create, sustain, and strengthen our sense of community. How many times do we meet people through the PTO or parents of our of friends of our kids, or during a disaster? We are at the local school that serves as an emergency center. So all those things I think reinforce that you're interested in something that's important and something that you can do. 4 things I'd like you to think about whether this is a good fit for you: your beliefs, your curiosity, your commitment, and your teamwork. You need to believe in the importance of public education, that it makes a difference in the lives of our children. And you have to believe in yourself that you can and will make a difference. You don't need to have a PhD in education or in educational administration, but you do need to support and believe in the mission of public education. Secondly, you need to be curious. You need to be curious enough to read your board packet before you have a board or monthly board meeting. You're not flipping the pages when the chair is calling the meeting to order. You need to be curious about what's in that packet and come to that meeting prepared. Whenever I go to a board meeting, I open the door and I say, Bill, how can I make a difference tonight at this meeting? You need to be committed. You need to be committed to take the job seriously, but also enjoy the pleasure of seeing important things done well. And at the same time, you need to have the strength, because from time to time, there will be slings and arrows of people that doubt, question what you're doing, what you're thinking, whether it's true or not true. And you need to be pulled together as a team. And that's the last attribute. Board membership is a team game. Board members together with and co-leaders with the superintendents are teammates, and we need to work together, and we need to listen to each other, and we need to participate with one another and learn from one another. And inevitably, there'll be a decision made that, as strong as you've advocated, you won't be on that winning side. That's fine. The important thing is that the board moves together and forward together. And that togetherness is going to pay huge fruits in the future relative to the accomplishment of your board. Finally, there are a lot of aids for you to be a board member. Your board members, themselves, the VSBA, the superintendent and his or her team. And there's some really good books out there that you can read, and internet sources that can help you along. The key thing is you're not alone here. And what you're going to be doing here, and I hope you're going to think and come up with a yes answer, is that you're not alone, you're making a difference, and it's special. And at the end of the day, you're going to feel very good. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bill. Next, we are going to hear from Natasha.
Hello. I took a little bit different view on answering these questions. So my comments are going to be a little more personal about my journey to becoming a school board member. So good evening to everybody. As Sue stated, my name is Natasha Eckhart. In addition to being a school board member, I'm also an educator with 10 years of classroom experience, a statewide organizer for the Vermont NEA, the Statewide Educators Union, and I'm currently serving my last year of a 3-year term as the Worcester rep for Washington Central. So why did I decide to serve on the school board? The short answer is I was kindly voluntold by the other Worcester representatives that I should run. But the real reason I decided to run is because of my personal experience as a student in Washington Central. I'm a Black woman who was adopted by a white family, and I was raised here in Central Vermont. I went to Worcester Elementary. I went to U32 junior high school, and I loved it. I was a 3-season athlete. I participated in Stage 32. I was the editor of the yearbook, and I've maintained some of the most amazing friendships from people that I met during all of those activities. And I can actually honestly say that I loved middle school and high school. It was a great experience for me. So when I moved my family from Baltimore back to Vermont, I was so excited to have my kids join the Washington Central family and attend the same schools that I went to. One of the things I quickly realized moving back to Vermont, though, was that the state I grew up in and also the school system I grew up in was not as progressive and welcoming as I remembered. I grew up in a time where the I don't see color was sort of that was the mantra. And as a result of that, I conformed and assimilated into what was expected of me. And as a result of that, I had, like I said, an amazing time. But what I want for my kids is to love Vermont and to love the school system as much as I did without having to assimilate. I want them to be their authentic selves. And I really want a school system that's going to be supportive of that. And so I figured the best way to do that was to join the school board and help be a direct role in shaping the vision, policy, budget, and goals of what our school district is meant to be. So serving on the board has been an experience. I've learned more than I've ever wanted to learn about the cost of tractors, capital improvement plans, budgets, and school funding. but I've also had a chance to look behind the curtain at the data that is used to drive decisions around curriculum and resource allocation. I serve on the policy committee, which has allowed me to have a direct voice in how the school system is managed. And I continually have amazing interactions with administrators, staff, and students that have provided insight and feedback about what a regular day looks like for them. Much of my free time outside of work in the school board is spent advocating for human rights and social justice causes through speeches at rallies, articles in local newspapers, participation in the Act One working group, and the district's own Humanity and Justice Coalition. And I advocate for those whose voices are not always heard and who are not always represented in their curriculum, their classrooms, or their community. And serving on the board has allowed me another avenue through which to advocate and make direct change that impacts not only my kids, but all other kids who haven't always had a voice. We are living in precarious times. Human rights are under attack, women's rights are under attack, public education is under attack. And our students are being inundated with images and information from social media, television, family, friends, and schools. And as educators, and yes, I see the school board as part of that educator family within the school system, we have a responsibility to provide the skills for our students to learn how to navigate all of this information and make sense out of it, and to create spaces where students can engage in dynamic conversations and challenge each other's thinking. Part of our role as school board members is to create policy, set educational expectations, create academic opportunities, and provide structures that can create those spaces where our students can actively engage in their education. Sometimes when pushing for this new vision of what public education can be, it feels like my voice is the only voice, or that I have no voice, and that the questions I ask or the pushback I provide to challenge the status quo isn't always heard or appreciated. There are times when it can feel isolating. And sometimes as a board member, you feel like the community isn't engaged with what the board is doing. But what I've realized is that there are people listening and they are engaged and they do appreciate the work that I am trying to do through the board. Students, staff, and community members have approached me out and about in town, in the grocery store, or at school events and thanked me for the voice and advocacy that I bring to the board. They've invited me to participate in meetings, committee work, and just regular conversations, so that I can hear their needs and bring these back to the board. These are the moments that make me realize that I do have a voice and it is having an impact, even if it's a small one. And I am really excited about the direction that my school district is moving in. And I'm really, really excited that I get to be a part of it as a school board member. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natasha. Next up is Eric.
Thank you, Sue. So as Sue mentioned earlier, I serve on the Wells Springs Unified Union School District. I also serve as a board member on the Greater Rutland County Supervisory Union Board. I've been a school board member for 5 years now, and still plan to continue running. Initially, I didn't decide to get into school board work. It's interesting that there was a vacancy on our board, and someone asked me if I would consider be interested in it. So I decided to submit a petition or a letter of interest, and in the middle of summer, I joined the board. And interestingly, my first meeting was a board retreat. I was really surprised by exactly what the board did and didn't do. I had no idea. So the first few months was a complete learning process. And, some of the things that I learned, in that time really surprised me, especially like the roles of the board, the relationship between, the superintendent, administration, and before I had to rerun, I really thought about, did I really want to continue doing this work? Because it was not what I had expected, but it definitely is something that I feel is rewarding on many levels. You can, as a board member, in addition to regular meetings, I was really surprised that you can, there's always something to learn. And it's when you have a meeting that once a month, I think that you can always take as much time as you need to learn additional responsibilities as a board member. The level of commitment that you want to take is really up to you. And what I mean by that is some board members just sit on the regular board meetings and prepare for those boards, but there's also committees that you can serve on, other boards, and I just think that there's always something to learn, and as a school board member, and I have actually had the opportunity where I've had someone come up and ask about what a school board member does, and what the role of the board is. And I always refer them to like the VSBA for information. There's plenty of information on, like as Sue presented tonight, and encourage them, because there's, a lot of, I think, collaborative work that can be done as a school board member along with other school board members. And I think, I've had a positive experience doing this over the years, from, the board goals, community engagement, and so on.
Thank you very much, Eric. And finally, we have Isaiah.
Hey everyone, I really appreciate everyone for speaking earlier. I mean, thank you, Sue, for the introduction. Natasha, Eric, and Bill, I really appreciate you guys being here. And thanks to everyone that's chiming in and all the other people that are going to view the video later. But as Sue said, I'm Isaiah. My name is Isaiah Donaldson. I am new to the school board. So I joined our school board. I'm in Winooski, Vermont, and I joined our school board back in June of this year. So it's only been just about 6 months. And I have nothing but positive things to say about it. It's just been a whirlwind of insanity and craziness, but in the best way. To kind of just like answer the questions that, we're facilitating towards our, like I said, how long I've been on the board is since June. Why did I decide to become a board member? So to give you a little history, as a kid, I'm from New York State. I moved to Vermont 10 years ago. My mom was an educator growing up. So, I went to public schools. I loved school. I had terrible experiences like everyone, but the overall scope of it was phenomenal and fabulous. And I cherish those times for sure. And it helped shape me to be the human being I am today. But I think a big attribute to that was my mom being an educator, being involved in my school district. She was the chair of her department, and was soon to become the superintendent for our district before she passed. But education's always been a big deal for me and my family and myself, and I'm the root of that. And the day that I learned I was going to have a kid, we're trying whatever, and my kid's now 7. And I said from the day right around when she was born, is like, whatever public school she ends up being in, I'm going to be on that school board. And the reason really was because, like Natasha shared, is like making a change for my community. But also, I want to, I'll be selfish a little bit. I want to make a change for my kid. I want to make a change for her friends and my community. So I settled in Winooski, bought a house there about 5.5 years ago, and I wouldn't have changed. I will not change it. I will stay there for sure for as long as my kid is at that school. Winooski is the most diverse city in the entire state. I'm the minority in my city, and I love that. I think it shows what the real world truly is. It's not just one color. It's not just one gender. It's not one anything. We are a group of everything, and it's phenomenal. So now that I'm actually on the board, my daughter's in 1st grade, and I think a big positive spin on it is I have brought a lot of fresh new energy to the board. I'm 33 years old. I am a realtor. I run a whole real estate company. I run a tile and stone business. I used to be a bartender. I used to work in retail. I'm a big whirlwind of a human, but I add a different edge that I think that a lot of boards potentially are seeking. And me providing that has just been fueled by the community. So many of my friends, neighbors, people I just see it on the street, they're like, that's awesome. You're on the board. This is phenomenal. Huge news. People I didn't even know, they're like, oh, you're the guy that wears crazy outfits, like whatever. And I think that's a good positive thing to add to a board. This isn't the first board I've served on, first school board I've served on, but I also serve on my board for my brokerage in real estate. And then, you know, I have some histories with the boards in the past, but overall, I have nothing but positive things to say about it. What has pleasantly surprised me? I'd say it's the amount of stuff that I've learned. Every single time I'm talking about board related things, we're at a board meeting, just chatting with the superintendent, anyone on the board, it's just, I learned something. I always make it a point that any meeting, anything that I'm sitting through, at least if I take one thing away from it, boom, it was worth my time. I learned from it. I got a different perspective, whatever it was. And another thing that pleasantly surprised me is like, I literally am making a change. And I think that was a big thing going into it. I thought I was just going to be this one small voice, one small little cog to the algorithm, you know, and who didn't really make much of a difference. But in my short few months on this board already, I've engaged in the public in a dramatic way that our district has never done before, brought new edge to it, brought new perspectives, getting more people to just chime into our board meetings on a monthly basis, just having my friends join in that are of my generation and getting them more involved in our community. And that has been outstanding. The biggest positive, I'd say I'm still riding a high from this past weekend, if you will. So it's budget season, as everyone would expect. And it's crazy. You know, we have a meeting at least once a week, if not twice a week for the past month and for the next month and a half. You know, things are crazy. We have a lot to do and a lot of work to do. This past weekend, I did a huge public outreach presentation and kind of projected presentation for our fiscal year budget for Winooski School District. And we did it at the school. We invited a bunch of community members. We provided lunch and childcare, and we did it, and it was phenomenal. And we provided it with 8 different languages. We had translators. We had literally 8 different speaking humans show up. Like, we had about 30 people show up, but about 8 different languages spoken. And we were doing all this in real time to talk to our community, because that is our community, and let them know what we're looking at, but also get their insights, and shared a survey with them. And now we're projecting a survey out to the rest of the town and getting people's insights, because like Sue was saying, it's not our choice. It's our community. It's our stakeholders, the people who live in our community who vote for us. We need to round our community around that and what they're looking for with the students in the school, because they are the future. And how can we budget those things? So getting their top choice to the bottom choice. And that's been phenomenal. And then also just the overall camaraderie and like friendships that I'm making is endless. It's phenomenal. Getting to meet people I probably would have never met in my life, or, you know, you see them walk down by the street and you're like, yeah, cool, that's a person, but you probably wouldn't talk to them. And now I'm best friends with that person, or I text them on a regular basis. Like, that's phenomenal. All in all, I'd say the biggest thing to think about is, if you're considering becoming a board member, you're here, you're obviously thinking about it. The biggest thing to think about it is a huge time commitment. It's a lot of work. It can be stressful. You're going to feel like a fish out of water. It's going to feel negative and all these things. But the way I look at those things is that's all positive, because that's all opportunity. That's all learning experience. That's your perspective. It's gaining other perspectives. you are a member of your community, and that means you do have a voice, and you're not just a sole isolated human, because we are in this beautiful, amazing world with endless amounts of humans, because no one is the same. And that's my biggest thing, is like, just go into it with open ears, open mind, and a big heart, because at the end of the day, public schools are truly the baseline for anyone to succeed in this world. And I think that's where I'm going to end it at, but I appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much, Isaiah, and thanks to all four of you for your insights and your advice. You've provided us with invaluable information this evening. And I might add, thank you for all of your commitment and hard work to your school districts. Carrie, I'm wondering if we have any questions for our panel from the audience.
We do. Here's the first one. If you're running in a school district that has some disruptive board members, are there any tips or strategies you have for setting a positive tone during a campaign?
I'll chime in. I'm happy to. I mean, the way I read that and the way I hear that is, bummer, this person is disrupting a board. They're maybe not conducive for the board or your community. But tips and strategies for setting a positive tone during your campaign. My rule of thumb is just be who you are. Because if you are that positive tone, you are the change that needs to happen for your district. Be 100% yourself. My rule of thumb for anything I've ever done in my life is being confident with who you are and your plan and your strategy, and owning that. Anyone around you is going to gravitate towards that and love that, because the truth and honesty and realness is all you can provide. And that would help your positive tone in the campaign. That's what I would say.
Thanks, Isaiah. Is there anyone else on the panel that would like to add anything? Are there any other questions from the audience, Carrie?
I'm currently on my school's subcommittee, and I attend every meeting and volunteer service in my school almost as much as the teachers would. Would a pension be a good idea?
I'm wondering if they're asking if there's a stipend for serving on the school board. Is that what they're meaning, as opposed to a pension?
Do you all want to let everyone know if you get a stipend and what it is?
Sure. We do get a stipend for Washington Central. The amount is voted on. And well, we propose an amount, and it goes onto the ballot, and the community votes on it during town hall meeting. And I will say that one of the things that we talked about this last time around is it really is important to provide stipends, because being able to serve on the school board, there's a certain amount of privilege that comes with the ability to give your time to the board. Either you are retired or you have flexibility in your job, or you have a partner at home that can help take care of your children while you're there, because it is a time commitment. And so, if there are people who want to run, but they work evening jobs, then that kind of takes being on the school board off the table for them. So having a stipend can help alleviate some of that for some people, and allow them the ability to participate, just because it's letting them know that their time is valued, because it can be a huge time commitment.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the way I see that question is, this person is on a subcommittee and is asking if it would be a good idea to put in a petition. That's the way I see it. And if that's correct, my thought would be, I mean, if you're serving on the school subcommittee and you want to continue doing this work, then yes.
Does anyone else want to add what your stipend is at your school district? It is different all over the state.
I know we have a stipend. I haven't gotten one. But that's just because I didn't run. I joined in the middle when someone left their seat, and I joined their seat. So I will actually be running again this coming year for an actual seat. It's my belief that the Winooski district stipend is $500. And I think that was voted on many, 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 many moons ago. It is a old stipend, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is these days.
Yeah, for our district, it's 507 for chairman.
I'm embarrassed to say I do not know what my stipend is.
Okay, and I will say that it across the state, what I do know is it is different throughout the state. There are some school districts that give a stipend per hour per meeting. Some are per meeting, some are per hour, and some are just annual. I believe the majority are just an annual amount. But so if you're interested in that question, you can definitely call your central office and ask, and I bet they could let you know. Especially the superintendent's administrative assistant could probably let you know what that is in your district. So we have some more questions that are popping up. Let's see. The budget process in my school district has been led by the finance team at the SU. Our community has encouraged a step back to first have a community assessment of needs. How do you get there as a community?
I guess I can just have a couple comments on that. It's not something that you can do now in the fall to impact, I don't believe effectively, what goes to town meeting in the spring. It is something that you can have as one of the board goals, is to facilitate more direct or greater input from the community. And you can do that through surveys, you can do that through outreach meetings, you can have community meals meetings and have that as a topic. You could send literature home or questionnaire home with the PTO or to the parents. You can also solicit opinion of the local business association to get some sense of that. But then you need to take the time to kind of synthesize that to how that's going to translate into the budget. The key thing to remember about budgets is budgets are the financial to allow your goals and priorities as a board, as a school system, to be implemented. That's what it means. So it's more than dollars and cents. Is do these budgets fund the things that we're promoting and trying to do? And to the extent that we're waving the flag and say we're going to do this, and we're voting a budget that doesn't support it financially, then you're going to have a credibility problem. And so how you do it is very important. And I think that question kind of is one to tackle that. I'd like to have a greater voice possibly.
Two things. One, our district is currently going through a strategic planning process where we're doing a lot of community engagement and doing small focus groups. The information we're getting this year, as Bill said, is not going to be able to be applied to the budget that we're going to be voting on in March. However, it is information that we can then synthesize and think about when putting our budget together for next year. The other thing is we do a community. We have 2 meetings a month. One is kind of board business and one is more a community-based informational meeting, which is when we do a lot of our budget presentations. And we move those around to different schools to help encourage community members to be able to come. We've got 6 different schools in our district. And so for some people, trying to get to the high school is not necessarily the easiest thing. But if we have the meeting at their town school, then they're more able to make it. So we try to create a space that hybrid meetings, and then also moving our meetings around to different locations to try and encourage as much public participation as possible.
Thank you, Natasha and Bill. Are there any other questions, Carrie?
I'm going to say this one is an interesting one. How do you ensure you are best serving all communities within your districts equally, such as special education, LGTB, ELLs, teachers, and etc.?
I guess I'm chiming in right away just because in my mind, my community is very much all of those things and 1,000 other things. We have an insane amount of different community members in our district, specifically speaking, especially towards the ELL bracket. I mean, I think what I said before when I was doing my panel, it's how do you reach out and engage those communities? So community engagement with public events like in my district, we just did that past event on Saturday to get people's involvement and feedback on what they're looking for with the budget and where they want money to go. And we made it accessible for people. Having it in a wheelchair accessible space, having food provided, having translation provided, having childcare provided. These are all big things that we had to organize and work up, but we did it because it's a big deal. And then aside from just, marketed events such as like that, just you as a board member yourself, you're a part of your community. So who do you talk to? Maybe go and talk to someone new. Is there a restaurant you go to all the time? Check out a new restaurant, like whatever, like make people know who you are and be excited about who you are. And talk about those things, get feedback, and then bring it back to your board. But I guess my biggest piece of advice, I guess, as a board member, would say, let's say you are having these conversations with community members, you can't promise anything to anyone. You are one vote on your board. I'm a board of 5. I do not act as my whole board. You are not acting as your board. You are acting as a member of the board. So the biggest piece is just, you can't promise things to people. You can promise, I will bring this up to my board. And my biggest thing is inviting people to your meetings. Come to our meeting. This is a public meeting. Whether or not your district provides it, we do in person, and then it's also accessible through Zoom online. But that doesn't mean it's accessible to everyone. I can't assume that every person in my community has internet or even has a computer to access Zoom. And I can't assume that someone has the free time at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday to come sit in a board meeting. But what are we doing to reach out to those people and making things more accessible? Yes, it's a hurdle. It's a lot. But if you care and really do love what your school is doing and being involved in that district, it's worth that, extra time and effort, in my opinion. So.
Thanks, Isaiah. The other thing that I would add is that if you are elected to school board, you will have full access to the VSBA website, and we have archived webinars on how the way that school boards can look at data and disaggregated data so that they can really look and make sure that different groups within their school community are getting the resources that they need to succeed. We're getting close to the end of our evening. Carrie, you said there are a number of other questions. So I think what we'll do is we'll create a document where we can provide some answers to the remaining questions. And I'm sorry that we couldn't get to all of them. I'm really excited that there's so many questions and that people are so interested in running for school board. So we will make sure to answer all of your questions and provide the answers to you in an email. Before we wrap up, I want to share very briefly how the VSBA supports school board members, new ones and veterans alike. We have a hardworking team of 5, and we're ready to provide you with these services that you see here on this slide. We work with individual boards, providing customized support, such as training and workshops, as well as support to all boards in the form of webinars, our annual conference, and a number of consultation services that are listed here. VSBA is a membership organization, and we exist to serve our members however we can. We look forward to getting to know those of you on this webinar, hopefully in the future when you're elected. Thank you again to our panelists, and thank you to all who joined us tonight to learn more about school board service. Now I'm going to hand it back to Debbie to close us out for the evening.
Thank you, Sue, very much. And thank you to our panelists once again for your time this evening. We appreciate all of you. If anyone on this webinar has any additional questions after tonight, in addition to the ones that you have already asked that we will be sure to answer, this is my contact information, so feel free to email me your questions. I will answer it myself, and if I can't, I will make sure that the appropriate individual answers your question. So please don't forget that very important deadline of January 29th to file your petition and your consent of candidate form if you are in a district that does vote by Australian ballot. That's really an important date to remember. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us this evening. We know that you will give running for school board a careful consideration. We hope that you will decide to run in 2024. And if you do, we wish you the best of luck. So good night.